It's 11:51 p.m. I'm in my workshop. Blueprints for the Crestone Sustainable Community. My 10-year passion project spread all over the table. My phone buzzes. Not a text, but a shared calendar notification from my wife. Stacy. The title, Divorce Consultation, 10:00 a.m. Before I can process that, a second notification. Gregory H. has accepted the invitation. Gregory. Her boss. À moment later. A text from Stacy. Mark. I see you got that. Gregory and I agree. This is for the best. Don't make this difficult. The assets are already being walled off. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I didn't even feel the hot flush of anger. It was clarifying. I looked around the workshop. At the exposed steel beams and the floor-to-ceiling glass I'd engineered myself, this $10 million house. It wasn't just our home. It was my portfolio. It was the brand that had launched Stacy's entire career as a sustainable VC. It was also a fortress. And I was the architect. I opened my laptop. The time was 11:54 p.m. My fingers didn't shake. I just worked. Stacy had walled off the assets. She was a finance person. She thought in spreadsheets. I'm an architect. I think in systems. At 12:03 a.m., I executed 3 commands. First, I revoked all user-level biometric access, Stacy's thumbprint, her Face ID, her voice command from every lock and terminal, all except mine. Second, I severed the home's entire network from her VC firm's cloud, a professional courtesy I'd set up so she could impress clients by turning on the lights from her downtown office. That courtesy was now revoked. Third, I transferred primary administrative control of all 72 zones, security, lighting, HVAC, the 800-pound steel driveway gates to a single, encrypted app on my personal cell phone. I heard the heavy thud of the magnetic locks engaging on the garage. She didn't just send me a calendar invite, she sent me a declaration of war. She just didn't realize I was the one who designed the castle, dug the moat, and controlled the drawbridge. I sat there in the silence. It lasted until 1:30 a.m. My phone lit up on the desk. A text from Stacy. The gates won't open. What did you do? I watched the text bubble. Mark. This is childish. You're proving my point. Let me in. I didn't respond. Proving her point. She was the one bringing her boss home. 1:45 a.m. A new text. This one from Gregory. Listen. Pal, let's be adults. You're embarrassing yourself. Turn the power back on, and we can discuss your exit. In the morning. Pal. The arrogance was breathtaking. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife, he was planning to evict me from the house I built. As if I were a renter who was late on a payment. Then, at 2:15 a.m., my phone didn't just buzz, it rang. The caller ID was County Sheriff, wellness check. They were pulling out all the stops. I answered, walked to the front gate, and met the 2 officers. Their flashlights scanned my face. Sir, we received a call from your wife. Said you were distraught, possibly a danger to yourself. Said you locked her out. I kept my voice perfectly calm. Good evening, officers. As you can see, I'm perfectly fine. I'm just working late in my shop. My wife is attempting to bring an unauthorized guest, her boss. Mr. Gregory, onto our private property at 2 in the morning. As the homeowner, I'm not comfortable with that. I didn't think I had to be. One officer looked at me. Then back at the car, a pristine vintage Mercedes idling just outside the gate. He'd seen this movie before. So, you're not in any danger? No. Officer, I'm just an architect with an early morning. He just nodded. All right. Sire. Have a good night. He walked back to their car, said a few words, and I watched the Mercedes taillights disappear down the road. They were left, fuming. On the curb. A minute later, a new text. This one from Stacy's best friend, Erica. Oh my God. Mark, Stacy's blowing up my phone. She's going crazy. Are you okay? What on earth is happening? I looked at that text for a long time. Support. I put the phone down. This wasn't a marriage. It was a contract I'd been funding. And the other party had just declared bankruptcy. It was time to audit the books. I sat in my workshop until the first hint of gray light touched the windows. Why wasn't I destroyed? Why didn't I feel like my world was ending? The truth is, a structure doesn't just collapse. It fails. It fails after years of stress, of tiny, invisible fractures, of the foundation shifting until the load is just too much. This wasn't a sudden shock. It was just the final, deafening crack. 18 years. We met when I had just founded Crestone Designs. I was an architect with a notebook full of ideas I couldn't afford to build. And she was the most brilliant, ambitious analyst I'd ever met. Stuck in a mid-level firm. She saw the world in numbers. I saw it in lines and light. We were a perfect team. I thought. Then, about 7 years ago, her ambition found a new gear. She didn't just want to climb the ladder. She wanted to be the ladder. And she needed a narrative. That's when I designed this house. Our $10 million home. It was never a home. It was a prop. It was a net zero. Sustainable masterpiece. I poured my soul into it. I engineered the geothermal heating, the gray water reclamation, the passive solar grid that made it breathe. It took 2 years of my life. And it worked. It got her into Forbes. It got her into Wired. Not as Mark's wife, but as Stacy, the visionary venture capital partner specializing in green tech. My name. It was in the fine print of the Architectural Digest spread, right next to the landscape designer and the guy who installed the pool. That was the beginning of it. The invisible man syndrome. At her parties, the ones she threw in my house, I'd stand by the wine bar I designed, holding a drink I'd paid for, and listen to her friends, tech billionaires, fund managers, politicians talk about her vision. I was introduced as Stacy's husband, the one who builds things. My work, my craft, the blueprints and the steel and the real, tangible creation of value. It all became quaint to her. Her world was pitch decks, 10,000-foot views, and the abstract value of a stock portfolio. I wasn't an intellectual partner. I was the reliable, grounded guy. Mark is so wonderfully grounded, she'd say, patting my arm, which I realized was her way of saying simple. She'd leave me to talk to the caterer while she went to Davos. I wasn't just the man behind the woman. I was the contractor. The guy who, quite literally, kept the lights on. But it was more than just my ego. My invisibility was a financial transaction. 5 years ago, she wanted to leave her firm and start her own independent VC round. She had the brains. She had the brand I'd built for her. But she had no seed capital. She had no collateral. So I gave her mine. I took my company, Crestone Designs, my 10-year-old business, my reputation, my entire payroll for my 8-person crew, and I leveraged it. I put Frank, my foreman who'd been with me from the start, I put his job on the line to secure the $15 million loan for her first fund. She called it our venture. For the 6 months it was risky. The moment it took off, the moment Forbes called her the new Queen of Green, it became her victory. My company's name. My risk. It wasn't in the press release. I sat there, the laptop glowing in the dark. I wasn't her husband. I was her first investor. I was the angel round. Our entire 18-year marriage hadn't been a partnership. It had been a subscription. One I was footing the bill for. My love wasn't a romance. It was a resource. My support wasn't a gift. It was just collateral. And now, after all that, she wasn't just leaving me. She was staging a hostile takeover of the life I had built. The assets she was walling off were my assets. The house I designed, the reputation I earned, the business I built with my own hands. This wasn't a breakdown. It was an audit. I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. The supportive text from Erica was still on the screen. Are you okay? No. I wasn't, but I was finally terribly clear. This wasn't about saving a marriage. It wasn't about love or heartbreak or even the affair. This was about saving my work. This wasn't a divorce. It was an extraction. And it was going to be surgical. I spent the next 2 hours in a cold shower, letting the water wash away the last 18 years of delusion. Stacy was an analyst. Gregory was a director. They lived in a world of projections, acquisitions, and hostile takeovers. Fine. I'd been a fool to think this was a marriage. It was a joint venture. And I was being forced out. At 7 a.m., I didn't call a divorce attorney. That's the second move in their playbook. They already had their consultation scheduled. They were ready for that. They weren't ready for Keith. Keith is 50. Ex-financial crimes detective, NYPD. He spent 20 years tracing dirty money through shell companies before he got tired of the politics and opened his own corporate security firm. His office is downtown. All smoked glass and biometric locks. He specializes in executive-level asset protection, which is a polite way of saying he finds out which senior partner is cooking the books. He was a client of mine 2 years ago. I designed his new office. He paid in full, up front, and told me, I trust people who build with steel, concrete cracks. I was at his office by 8:30. He poured 2 cups of black coffee. He has this unnerving stillness. He just listens. So I laid it all out. The 11:51 p.m. invite, Gregory's acceptance, the assets text, the 2 a.m. wellness check, the whole thing. I finished. He took a sip of his coffee. Head didn't say, I'm sorry. Man. Or, what a nightmare. He didn't offer sympathy. He said, the lockout was good. A solid defensive perimeter. It bought you time and established control of the physical asset. But it's petty. I bristled. Petty, they're trying to kick me out of my own house. Yes, Keith said, leaning forward. It's a domestic disturbance. It's reactive. Stacy and this guy, Gregory. They're VCs. They don't care about the house. They care about the value of the house. They care about their reputation. Right now, you're just an angry husband. An angry husband is a nuisance. A nuisance gets bought off or, if they're too loud, swatted down by a judge. He was right. That's exactly how they saw me. An embarrassment. Gregory had texted, so what do? You stop fighting like a husband, Keith said, his voice flat. You start fighting like a competitor. This isn't a divorce. It's a war of integrity. My head snapped up. Integrity. The word I'd built my entire business on. They think you're just a builder. Keith continued, as if reading my mind. They think your world is small. Sawdust and blueprints. They live in the big world. Public funds. Shareholder meetings. Brand identity. You can't beat them on their turf by being emotional. You have to beat them on your turf. By being professional, you have to show them that a man who builds with steel knows a hell of a lot more about structural integrity than they do. I thought about my world, my turf, my business. I said, Crestone Designs. Exactly. What's the intersection? Where do your small world and their big world meet? Where are you the expert? And they're just... The money. The answer hit me like a ton of bricks. The county zoning board hearing. Keith smiled. A thin, cold smile. Tell me. It's in 3 days. For my sustainable community, the Crestone Project. It's my life's work. Keith, 10 years of planning. And them, Stacy's firm is the primary backer. It's their flagship green investment. She and Gregory. They're scheduled to be there. It's a PR move. The visionary VCs partnering with the local builder to save the planet. Is it public, Keith asked? Packed. And it's live streamed on the county website. Keith sat back, lacing his finger. A stage. A live-streamed stage where you are the scheduled expert, and they are the audience. That's not petty. Mark, that's a kill zone. You don't hit them in the living room, you hit them right in the stock price. A new kind of energy started to burn in my chest. This wasn't anger. It was focus. It was the same feeling I get when I solve a complex structural problem. Okay, I said. So I have a stage. What's the play? I can't just get up there and talk about the affair. They'll paint me as unhinged. You won't have to, Keith said. You hired me to find out what the real play is. He opened a new, encrypted file on his monitor. Give me the names. Stacy, Gregory, and... He looked at me. And what? You mentioned a best friend. Erica, the one who texted you. Yeah, Erica. She's Stacy's. I don't know. Her shadow, been her best friend for years. She's already offering support, calling Stacy a monster. Keith's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed. What's her last name? I told him. He typed it in. She worked with Stacy. No. Arrival firm. Client relations. Why? You think she's involved? Keith just stared at the screen. Mark. I spent 20 years in fin crimes. Let me tell you a rule. The spouse is predictable. The lover is predictable. The helpful best friend. They're the variable. In my world, the person who runs toward the explosion offering help is either a saint or the one who lit the fuse. The thought was unsettling. Erica, she'd always seemed. Harmless. Annoying. Even, this is what you're paying me for, Keith said, standing up. You're an architect. Go design your presentation for the hearing. Make it perfect. Assume it's the most important presentation of your life. I'm a security consultant. I'm going to run a full structural analysis on these 3 people and find the fault line. He put his hand on my shoulder. Go to work. And stay off the phone. Don't respond to any of them. Not Stacy. Not Gregory. And especially not Erica. From now on, you're not an angry husband. You're a professional preparing for the biggest pitch of your life. I walked out of his office, the sun hitting my face. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't an invisible man or a contractor. I was a man with a blueprint. The next 2 days were a blur of cold. Perfect focus. I worked from my workshop, sleeping on the cot in the back office. My phone, which I'd set on a separate table, became a shrine to their escalating panic. It lit up constantly. Stacy, Mark. This is insane. You're going to destroy both of us. Think about our friends. Think about the firm Gregory. I'm scheduling a meeting with my attorney. You've committed a serious offense. You will be hearing from us. Erica, Mark. Please answer. I'm so worried. Stacy is saying the most insane things about you. I tried to defend you, but she's completely unhinged. Please let me know you're safe. I didn't answer a single one. I just worked. I pulled every blueprint, every feasibility study, every environmental impact report for the Crestone community. I refined my presentation for the zoning board. My slides were immaculate. My numbers were unassailable. I was going to give the best presentation of my life. I was in the zone, tweaking a render of the community water reclamation system. When my secure line rang, it was Keith. His voice was different. The cool, consultant tone was gone. This was the ex-cop. This was the I found something voice. Mark, he said. No preamble. Stop what you're doing. I'm sending you 2 files. Open the first one. It's a prospectus. I clicked on the encrypted link. It was a PDF. A beautiful, glossy, 100-page document. The title, The Blackstone Greenwood Fund 2, Architecting the Future. A new $200 million tech fund. My blood ran cold. It's not just an affair. Mark, Keith's voice said in my ear. It's fraud. Go to page 34. I scrolled. Page 34. The centerpiece of the fund, the proprietary intellectual property that made their fund unique. It was my Crestone community, my renders, my designs, my net zero IP. They had rebranded it. They were calling it the GS model. For Gregory and Stacy, they'd written paragraphs of corporate buzzwords about how they had conceptualized and developed this proprietary system for sustainable living. They weren't just stealing my wife. They were stealing my legacy. How I whispered. My voice was hoarse. How is this possible? The IP is locked to Crestone Designs. The copyrights are all in my company's name. This is just a picture. It's not real. That's the second file, Keith said, his voice grim. Open it. I clicked. It was a single page. A work-for-hire contract. It transferred 100% of all intellectual property, all current and future rights, for the Crestone project from Crestone Designs, LLC to Blackstone Greenwood Holdings, for the sum of $1, and at the bottom, glowing on the screen, was my digital signature. The one I used for city permits, the one I used for contracts, a perfect, clean forgery. I stared at it. This wasn't a divorce. This wasn't an affair. This was a crime. A federal wire fraud. Career-ending crime. They were planning to bleed me dry, kick me out of my house, and then build their next $200 million fund on the back of my stolen work. My anger wasn't hot. It was Arctic. It was the cold. Clean anger of absolute clarity. But how? Keith, I said, my mind racing. This signature, this contract, they're good, but they couldn't have gotten the files, the root CAD files, the server-side data. They're on my private server. They're triple encrypted. The only other person, the only one, whoever had administrative access. I stopped. My blood turned to ice. Was Erica. Keith was silent for a beat. Bingo. I told you. The helpful one is always the one who lit the fuse. What? What is this? It's a 10-year grudge. Mark, Keith said. I did the deep dive. 10 years ago. Stacy and Gregory's first big acquisition, the one that put them on the map, it was a small data analytics startup. It had 2 co-founders. Gregory and Stacy charmed one, and pushed the other one out with a lowball offer and an NDA the size of a phone book. She lost everything. Her name, her equity, her work. Guess who that co-founder was? Erica. It all clicked. 10 years. 10 years of best friend status. 10 years of lunches. Of support. Of being Stacy's shadow. It wasn't friendship. It was a long shadow grudge. It was justice delayed. Not justice denied. It was justice perfected. She'd been playing a different game the entire time. I looked at my phone. Still buzzing on the other table. Erica's "I'm so worried" texts. It wasn't support. It was reconnaissance. She was checking to see if her bomb had gone off. She played them. I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. She's been waiting for this. She didn't just let them steal your IP. Mark, Keith said. She encouraged it. She probably planted the idea. She gave them the root files. She knew they were arrogant enough and greedy enough to use them. She handed them the rope, knowing they'd hang themselves. And me, I asked, what am I in this? You, Keith said, are the guy who's supposed to kick the chair. She set up the entire scenario. She engineered this war, knowing they would betray you. She wanted this. She wanted Stacy to lose everything, just like she did. And she's using you to do it. I looked at the forged contract on one screen and the glossy, fraudulent prospectus on the other. Erica was a master manipulator. She'd been playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. But she'd made one mistake. She assumed I was just a pawn, an angry husband who would explode and make a mess. She underestimated me, just like Stacy and Gregory did. She thought I was just another contractor, there to do the dirty work. She didn't realize that in giving them the files, she'd also given me the one thing I needed. She'd given me the weapon. Mark Keith asked, you there, this is a lot. I shut the files. I looked at my pristine, practiced presentation for the zoning board. It was all about water reclamation and property values. I highlighted the entire thing and pressed delete. I'm here. Keith, I said. I pulled out a new, blank slide, and I know exactly what I have to do. This isn't revenge anymore. It's pest control. The county zoning board hearing was in the main municipal hall. It was packed. This wasn't a normal Tuesday night. My project was the biggest new development in a decade. The local news had 2 cameras in the back. The red live stream light was on, and right there, In the front row sat Stacy and Gregory. They were radiating power. Stacy was in a sharp $8,000 suit, her hair pulled back. She was smiling, whispering to Gregory, who was leaning back in his chair, one hand draped over the back, looking bored. He nodded to a county commissioner, who smiled and nodded right back. They weren't just attendees, they were holding court. When I walked down the aisle to the presenter's table, Stacy caught my eye. She gave me a small, tight, condescending smile, the kind of smile you give a waiter who's a little slow. It was the, let's just get this over with, look. In that moment, seeing them there, so confident, so utterly untouchable in their arrogance, I finally understood it wasn't about me. It wasn't about our 18 years. It wasn't even about the money. This was the success paradox. They were addicts on a hedonic treadmill. They'd had it all. The perfect careers. The 25-year marriage for him. The 18-year for her. The money. The status. The power. But the thrill fades. Each new success. Each new bonus. Each new article written about them. It just wasn't enough. So they needed something new. Something risky. The affair wasn't an act of passion. It was an acquisition. It was a new, shiny, secret thing to own. And the fraud wasn't an act of necessity. It was for the thrill. It was the ultimate high. To steal my life's work. My entire legacy. Right from under my nose to sit in the front row of my own presentation. That was the real drug. I realized I wasn't dealing with people who had a lapse in judgment. I was dealing with two pathologically bored, empty people who would burn down anything, and anyone, just to feel something. And in that moment, all the pain, the betrayal, the last lingering thread of us, it all evaporated. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was clinical. I was an architect about to condemn a structurally unsound building. My name was called Mr. Mark, Crestone Designs. I walked to the podium. I set my laptop down and plugged it into the projector. My hands were perfectly steady. I looked at Stacy and Gregory. They were both looking at their phones. I tapped the microphone. Good evening. My voice was clear, and it echoed slightly in the large room. My name is Mark, founder of Crestone Designs. I'm here tonight to present my plans for the Crestone Sustainable Community. I clicked. The first slide came up on the 20-foot screen behind me. It was a beautiful, hyper-realistic render of the finished community. Green roofs, flowing water, community spaces. In the front row, Stacy finally looked up, a smug smile on her face. She and Gregory had funded this. After all, this was their victory lap. I let the image hang there for a beat. I looked at the board members. I looked at the live stream camera, but before I discussed the future of this project, I said, my voice dropping just a fraction, I must first address a fundamental issue of integrity. Click. The beautiful render disappeared. It was replaced by a stark, black and white scan, the work-for-hire contract. The room was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I used the laser pointer, and a small red dot landed on the purchase price. $1, I said. I moved the dot to the bottom. To my forged signature, this document, I said, my voice calm, was filed 3 weeks ago. It transfers 100% of the intellectual property for the Crestone project, my entire life's work, to Blackstone Greenwood Holdings. For $1, I could hear a gasp from the back. The commissioner, who had been smiling at Gregory, was now sitting bolt upright, staring at the screen. I looked at the front row. Gregory was frozen, his arrogant slouch gone. Stacy had gone the color of drywall. This document, I continued, is a forgery, and it is the cornerstone of a massive, ongoing fraud. Click. The next slide. The glossy cover of their $200 million prospectus, Architecting the Future. This project, I said, is being actively stolen. It's being stolen by two people who are in this room tonight. My wife, Stacy, and her partner, Gregory. The room erupted. It wasn't a murmur, it was a roar. People were standing up. The media cameras were swiveling. I saw Stacy's hand fly to her mouth. I held up my hand. "Please," I said, and the room quieted. They wanted to hear the rest. "They didn't just steal from me," I said, making eye contact with the board members. "One by one, they are stealing from you. They are using my stolen work as the central, fraudulent asset in a new fund. A fund that I've discovered. Ménage public pension funds. Your money." I let that sink in. This was no longer a domestic dispute. I wasn't a jilted husband. I was a whistleblower. They used their position of trust to commit wire fraud. They put this county's investments, and your trust, at risk. All to back a lie. My question to this board is simple. If they cannot be trusted with the assets of their own partners, how can they ever be trusted with yours? No one spoke. The commissioner was staring at Gregory, his face dark red. "Therefore," I said, effective immediately, "I am withdrawing the Crestone Community Project from consideration. I cannot, in good conscience, allow my work to be associated with this level of corruption." I looked one last time at the board. "And I am submitting this entire presentation, including the forged contract and this fraudulent prospectus, to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you for your time." The hall exploded. People were shouting. Reporters were rushing the stage. I didn't look at them. I didn't look at Stacy, who was shaking. I didn't look at Gregory, who looked like he was going to be sick. I calmly unplugged my laptop. I gathered my notes, put them in my briefcase, and snapped it shut. I walked off the stage, past the chaos, past the security guard, and out the heavy main doors into the cool night air. I was done. The implosion wasn't slow. It was a structural failure. The second the SEC got my file, the investigation into the public pension funds went public. The firm, Blackstone Greenwood, didn't just stumble, it evaporated. It was insolvent in 48 hours. Stacy and Gregory weren't just in trouble, they were facing multiple federal charges for wire fraud, securities fraud, and embezzlement. The news had called them visionaries. The indictment called them racketeers. I got one call, from a number I didn't recognize. It was Valerie, Gregory's wife. Her voice was calm. She just said, "Thank you. You did what I couldn't in 25 years. Then she hung up and filed for her own proceedings. And what about Erica? Her 10-year-long shadow grudge, her perfect plan was a little too perfect. When the feds subpoenaed the servers, they didn't just find Gregory's forgery, they found her digital fingerprints all over the data transfer. She wasn't a whistleblower, she was an accomplice. Her own firm fired her for unethical client poaching and corporate espionage. She'd spent a decade sharpening a blade, only to fall on it herself. And the house, the $10 million prop, it was seized in the asset forfeiture. I didn't even fight for it. It was never a home, it was a stage. And the show was over. Today, I'm in a small, rented workshop near the old rail yards. It smells like sawdust and welding ozone. It's small. It's loud. And it's real. My foreman, Frank, and all 8 members of my crew, they stayed. They said they'd rather build for real in a garage than fake it in a palace. I was standing at my old drafting table. The original Crestone blueprints, the ones the SEC had returned from evidence, were rolled out. 10 years of my life? My stolen legacy. I looked at them for a long time. All that work, all that pain, I slowly rolled them up, slid them into a cardboard storage tube, and put them on a high shelf. Then, I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I picked up a pencil. I started to sketch. A new line, something small, something. Mina, that night, for the first time in 18 years, I slept through till morning. No noisy, no buzzing notifications, just silence. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.